A few years ago, we had a student named Nathan who was so proud of himself after his summer session at the Learning Center. He had worked so hard and he'd made really good progress. And for the first time, he actually felt excited to go back to school. But then, just about 2 weeks before school started, something shifted. He couldn't sleep. Every time someone brought up school, he felt sick to his stomach. That confidence that he had built over the summer started giving way to anxiety. Our brain loves a fresh start. It actually gives us a chemical boost at the thought of a new beginning. When something like the new school year rolls around, the brain releases a wave of neurotransmitters, dopamine to spark motivation, norepinephrine to help us focus, and serotonin to support emotional balance and sense of well being. It's called the fresh start effect, and it can really inspire hope and momentum. But the brain also remembers hard things and it can fall back into old patterns of anxiety. Nathan's school year actually turned out great. Once he got back to school, he realized he really could do it and he started feeling confident and in control again. If your child or teen is looking at the start of school with more trepidation than excitement, stick with us. Today, my friend and colleague Jamie Roberts is here to talk about what students can do to reduce anxiety around going back to school and some simple, healthy habits that they can use to have a less stressful, more enjoyable school year. Welcome to the LD Expert Podcast, your place for answers and solutions for dyslexia and learning differences. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder and executive director of Stowell Learning Centers and author of Take the Stone Out of the Shoe, a must-have guide to understanding, supporting, and correcting dyslexia, learning, and attention challenges. My guest today is Jamie Roberts. Jamie is a licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of Equilibrium Counseling Services in Rancho Cucamonga, California. She is the author of a wonderful user-friendly book called Mindfulness for Teen Anxiety. Jamie works extensively with teens and young adults and brings both personal and professional insight into how to help teens stay grounded and emotionally balanced, especially at times of transition, like we're in now. So, welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill. I always love having conversations with you, especially about our favorite teens.
That's right. Well, I'm so happy to have you back with us. I really think you just get teens. You have this amazing way of meeting them right where they are, getting inside their world without it being weird, which is kind of a superpower, actually, and helping them take real, doable steps forward.
It helps that I think that they're the coolest people around. I think it's just so fun to be at that mixed age of still being a kid that wants to play, but having an understanding of adult concepts and being able to go into depth in those conversations and still being playful about it.
Absolutely. Boy, it's kind of hard to think back to those teen years, but I kind of loved being a teen.
Mm-hmm.
It might be fun to be back there. But anyway, there's a lot going on at that time of life and this time of year. And I know parents are going to really appreciate everything you have to share today.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to jump in and talk a little bit about the beginning of school. What are you seeing with the teens that you work with around going back to school?
Mm-hmm. So I usually see one of two things. Either one is they don't want to talk about school at all. They just want to stay in summer. They'll get to school when they get to school and ignore it. Or it's the other side of starting to have anxiety about the school year starting. Usually there is an excitement about seeing friends or being around friends more consistently, but there's an anxiety about the academics and a lot around the anticipation of the unknown, of not knowing what to expect, what their class schedule would be, who will their teachers be, will classes be easy or hard? So a lot of those what if questions start to kind of build up.
Yeah. I mentioned the fresh start effect. I mean, that is a real thing. And
Mhm,
this idea that our brains naturally respond to new
mhm,
beginnings with a
mhm,
boost of motivation and focus. And I feel like I see that with a lot of our students.
mhm,
Um, but even with that fresh start energy, some kids experience anxiety that just really seems to ramp up
mhm,
just before school begins. So,
mhm,
how could a teen or a parent reframe
mhm,
their fears or
mhm.
nervousness about the school year so they can take advantage of that newness and fresh start?
Yeah, well, I love that you bring in the brain chemistry piece of it because that is so integral. I like to talk about evolutionary, our brain is always looking for danger because if we can identify the danger, we know what safety is. And even now, when we think about the anticipation of school anxiety, our brain fills in the gaps of the what if. If I don't know what's around the corner, I'm going to assume it's danger so I can prepare myself and find safety. And that's what we do a lot with the what if questions, and often that's what fuels anxiety or worry is because I don't know what the answer is. So I'm going to assume it's going to be bad. And so a way we can reframe that is knowing that our brain is making up a story. Our brain is filling in that
Mhm.
blank. So what is there another story that we could put in place? Is there another what if that maybe is more neutral or more positive, and find alternatives to the story, or even collect facts so we can actually fill in those blanks? What are the facts of the situation? Do we have the schedule? Can we see if we have friends in classes? Can we go walk through campus before school starts to be able to find where we need to go? Depending on what the fear is, how do we get the facts and the information to fill in that blank to reduce the unknowns?
Wow, I love that idea that our brain creates a story, and
Mhm,
could it be a different story?
mhm,
I also think, when you talk to kids about the brain and what their brain does, and they get
mhm,
the idea, okay, if I don't know, then my brain automatically is
mhm,
looking for the danger there,
mhm,
but there could be a different story.
mhm.
I really like that
Yeah.
language a lot.
Yeah, and that's what I do. I practice that with my clients of fact finding. If we don't know something, what are the facts of the situation? And if there's a fact that's missing, how do we find it? Can we ask somebody for it? Can we seek it out? Or is that where the question mark still lands? And how do we prepare our nervous system around that specific unknown instead of the big, ambiguous, giant, all of it's unknown?
Right, right.
Mhm,
Um, that's interesting also when you say, "Can we prepare our nervous system?"
mhm,
Um, in some ways, I think that gives kids more sense of control. "Oh,
mhm,
there is something I can do to prepare my nervous system,
mhm,
which is a little anxious. It's
mhm,
not me, like there's something wrong with me as a
mhm.
person. I have this thing that I can take care of."
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, our nervous system is doing what it's supposed to do. Our nervous system reacts to our environment in a protective way. And sometimes it is overreactive and sometimes it's underreactive. And so being able to listen to our body and help
Mm,
turn down the volume of the intensity or help regulate back into like a neutral place, and being able to work in tandem with what our nervous system is telling us, not to suppress it or ignore it because that is important
mhm.
information, but how to work with it so that it doesn't continue to dysregulate us.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Wow. I love that, and I think
mhm,
I can see how kids could really relate to
mhm.
that.
Absolutely. I talk about having an explanation versus an excuse. That if we can
Yeah.
explain what's going on with our body, explain what's going on in our brain, that gives ourselves more context and the people around us more context. And it's not an excuse, and it's not just passing it off, but it gives actual information about what's going on in a situation.
Right. And as soon as we have the knowledge or the understanding, that gives us a sense of power and control.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some of the most common signs of back to school anxiety that parents or even teens themselves
Mhm.
might tend to overlook?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think the most common that we'll see is like some rumination or that anticipatory anxiety. So the rumination would be repeating a story over and over or asking repeat questions about a situation to gain an attempt to gain that information to fill in the blank. What we might
Mhm.
not initially recognize as anxiety may be if a kid starts to get quieter. If they're not talking about it or not expressing it, but they just get a little quieter or a little
Mm.
sullen, and maybe they're not engaging as much with some of the summer activities, or when the questions about school come up they just kind of shrug or say whatever. There's not an engagement in either way. And so if there's a shift in the overall interaction or their energy, that would be something to pay attention to. I think a second thing that we may notice is if kids are staying up later at night, we tend to see a big spike in anxiety in those late night hours because all the stimulation of the world has gone quiet. They don't have an activity to be to, they don't have a sibling to interact with, they don't have a chore to get done. The world is quiet, they're just in their room or in bed, their brain really starts going. That's the only thing to kind of pay attention to. And I think that that can get overlooked because it's summer. We might be staying up late. We know teens like to stay up later. So noticing a kid staying up late may not send any flags, but asking questions about what they're doing during that time, how they feel during that, what are they thinking about, would give a little bit more clues or context to how their brain is processing information when everything else goes quiet.
Mhm. Wow, that's really interesting. You know, teens traditionally don't always love to have their parents ask them questions. They
Mhm,
kind of feel like they're being interrogated a little bit.
mhm,
And but if parents are starting to see that, that
mhm,
kind of a shift with their kids, do you have a suggestion about how they might just sort of open the door for them to talk about
mhm.
that?
Always start conversations with curiosity. If your questions come from a curious place of just, I just want to learn more, it takes away that interrogation feeling versus
Mhm.
the like, what happened? What were you doing? What time did you go to bed? That feels like an interrogation. But if it's like, how was the rest of your night? How late did you stay up? Were you playing that game again? How'd you do on that level? Like there's a curiosity, and during that curiosity, you get conversation going and you gain more information. And you're investing in what they're interested in as well, which opens up more desire to share information. So I think that would be a piece. I
Mhm.
also think we model behavior. And if we're sharing about our own experiences, if the parent is also talking about, I'm starting to feel a little nervous about you guys going back to school. I was up last night thinking about how our schedules are going to change, or some of the pressure that it might be, or how nice of a summer we've been having. Like, have you been having any thoughts like that? So when we as adults have to say the things for kids to know that they can say them back to us. So if we're
Right.
talking about our own experiences, if we're modeling that and mirroring that experience, kids now have the invitation to also have those conversations and to know how to say the words or how to bring it up because you're bringing it up.
Yeah, that's it's funny, we at the Learning Center, we're modeling all the time,
Mhm,
modeling the language, modeling, the strategy, and of course, that's a huge piece of
mhm,
how kids learn and grow, and even though teens look so grown up, they're still
mhm.
learning and growing.
They absolutely are still learning. Like they may be capable of a lot of things, but we have to remember that some of those capabilities or those function spaces are still flexible. If they were able to do it once before, it doesn't mean they're going to be able to do it consistently every time. So how do we have space for that learning curve of fluidity?
Right, right. So what is the difference between kind of typical school nerves
Mhm,
and anxiety that really might need more attention?
mhm. Absolutely. I think there's a very natural developmental stage of anticipating a transition, a little like the butterflies, the jitters of the unknowns, and kind of having that conversation. Like that seems within the realm of like expected. I think when we start to see it move past outside of that initial conversation, right? Like nervousness for a specific event kind of stays within that event. It might be time limited or like the nerves pop up when you're talking about it, but if you're off doing something enjoyable, you're not
Mhm.
feeling that same anxiety. Versus anxiety is always present when you're in that state. So whether or not you're talking about school or you're playing outside, you're still kind of feeling that nervousness or you have the thoughts running in the back of your head. So if you see your kid bringing it up multiple times or asking additional questions, or if it's the same question over and over and you've answered it before, that means some need in that question is not being met or they're ruminating on it. They start coming up with a lot of the what if stories or nervousness, or maybe you know what, I said I wanted to try out for that sport but I don't want to do it anymore, it feels like too much. Those might be
Mhm.
signs that it is moving beyond what is typical. So if it is an adjustment from their typical behavior and it becomes a consistent change, that would be something to really take notice of.
Right, right.
Mhm,
Well, that's really helpful.
mhm,
You have a book that I just love, Mindfulness for Teen Anxiety. And I know you're writing another book, and I can't wait for that one to come out. But this particular book, you offer some really accessible things for
mhm,
teens. And
mhm.
I'm wondering if you have a couple of mindfulness kinds of strategies that you would suggest that teens start to use on, day one or as they prepare to go back to school.
Absolutely. The book is written in a very hands-on sensory-based thing to be able to apply immediately and also has some mindfulness techniques that can be done at school with not anybody even noticing that's what they're doing. Um, some go-to ones that I think are very basic, when you can integrate them into your daily life is when they are the most successful. If we only use mindfulness techniques when we're at that peak of anxiety, they'll still help, but we want to work on not getting to that peak. So if we can integrate them throughout the whole day, throughout the week, it really decreases the anxiety overall. So two of the ones that I think are my favorite, one is grounding. So grounding is literally on the ground, like really reconnecting back to your body and to earth and feeling your body. So you use your five senses and in a sensory way. So it can be like feeling the actual pressure, physical touch pressure of your feet on the ground. It can be noticing three things you can see. It can be three things you can feel, three things you can hear. And that brings you back into the present moment instead of drifting off again into those what if stories, like that's in the future, or if it's in the past about something that went wrong before, but bringing us right back into the present moment. And in this present moment, what can I find around me? And my favorite way to do that is with a pet. So if you have, I have
Mm.
cats. So if I have my cat and I can feel her fur and I can hear her purr and I can see the pattern of her print, and I'm not going to taste my cat, but there's ways that we can use our grounding stuff with our animals. And a lot of kids, our animals are really great ways to help regulate the nervous system.
I love that. And uh, because it's just so tangible.
Mhm.
And thinking about getting in a habit of doing that throughout your day, you really are retraining your
Mhm.
brain. You're
Mhm.
training your brain what it feels like
Mhm.
to be calmer and more grounded. And when
Mhm.
you do it
Yeah.
repeatedly, then
Mhm.
you can just get to that brain state
Yeah.
so much more quickly,
Yeah,
sort of
you could be
on
sitting
command.
in third period math class and just close your eyes and think of petting your animal and taking that big breath, and it can help
Mhm.
really lower that intensity.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, any other kinds of, I mean, that's such a great
Yeah,
habit and
yeah.
easy to do because you don't need anything to do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
The other quick one that's easy to do on the fly, especially if somebody's like in almost maybe their anxiety's at a panic attack level or they're really struggling to regulate, is
Mm.
to either use like getting a glass of water, like a nice big cold gulp of water. That really helps reset your nervous system. Or putting an ice pack on your chest over your polyvagal nerve really is like that quick, like, ooh, okay, wait, pause, let me reset. And those can be quick ways when things are feeling very, very intense.
Oh, that's really interesting because it is literally a reset. It
Mhm.
just kind of says to your nervous system, "Hold on,
Mhm.
let's do something different."
Mhm.
Wow,
Exactly.
thank you.
Mhm.
So, school isn't just about academics. I mean, I know for many of our students, that's a big stressor uh,
Mhm.
until they've kind of worked through those issues. But it's also a social environment too. So, how can kids stay grounded when things like friendships and social comparison
Mhm.
or performance anxiety keep triggering stress for them?
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. So I work with a lot of neurodivergent kids, especially ADHD and autism. And something a lot of my ADHDers experience is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And that
Mm,
is the experience of a heightened response to a perceived rejection. It doesn't have to necessarily be a rejection, or it can be a built up response to, I've been rejected many times. And so I'm anticipating that is what's happening. So, again, with
mm,
my clients, I'll work on what is actually happening in the moment. Can we seek clarity? And how do we have clear communication? Um, One of the ways that I work with clients in setting boundaries or setting clear communication with their friends is modeling it also, but checking in with communication of, is that what you meant? Can you repeat it for me? When we're talking, are you venting to me? Do you want my input or am I just listening? So, seeking that clarity right away about what kind of interaction it's going to be can really give ease to like what the expectation is. My friend's talking to me and I tried to give advice, but she didn't take my advice. Was she looking for advice? Was that the need that your friend was asking for? I was telling my friend something and she wasn't listening to me. Did you start the conversation with, I just need to share this with you. I don't need feedback at this moment, or I'd really like your input. What should I do? So, kind of starting off our conversations with
mm.
clear expectations of how we want interactions to go, and knowing that everybody has their own set of needs and my needs and your needs may not totally match up. It doesn't mean that you don't like me as a person or we're not actually friends. It can just be a misalignment of needs in that moment.
Wow, that's a really good piece of learning for everybody, really,
Mhm.
in relation to communication.
Mhm.
What do I really want to have happen here, or
Mhm.
what do they want to have happen? And
Mhm.
having the language and uh, kind of permission
Mhm.
to learn to ask, you
Yeah.
know, what's
Yeah.
expected there.
Yeah. I think that there's a big fear of having a friend say no, or to have a friend telling us that's not what they needed. And then that feeling of, I failed, I'm a bad friend, or I'm a bad person because they told me no. And I think building up some of that understanding and strength that a no can just be like, not right now. This isn't what I need. It doesn't mean that we aren't in friendship. It can just mean I'm not in that place and I don't want this connection at this moment, or not in that way. And being able to have those additional translations of it, or asking for that clarity of translation so that we don't take it as that big rejection and then that failure and then we withdraw and then we don't reach out to that friend and now we feel like we have no friends.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I want to take a minute and talk about the new training company that you have because y- you have so many amazing strategies, and I know that parents, professionals would probably love to get on board and learn some of these. Can you tell us about your new company?
Yes. So my new company is called NeuroPebble, and it takes the idea of penguin pebbling, which is penguins, when they find a pretty rock, they give it to the penguin that they care about. And a lot of neurodivergent people, that's one of our love languages of like, oh, I found this pretty rock and I thought of you and I wanted to give it to you. We share information that way too in our care. So neuropebbling is the sharing of ideas and concepts. So when we get really interested in a deep topic, let's share those facts, let's share that information. And so really cool, in anticipation of school coming, we have 3 courses coming out. And our courses are designed for clinicians and allied professionals, but they are open to anyone who has an interest in them. But just note that the content will be focused on like clinical work. And so we have 3 coming up for the back to school. We have Beyond the Basics and Deepening Therapeutic Work with Autistic Children with a PDA Profile with Brooke Guerin. We also have Transformative Engagement, Advanced Strategies to Supporting Black, Interracial, and Neurodiverse Families and Children with Jasmine Bishop. And then we have the Revolving Door Stops here, Strategies for Autistic Teens in Crisis with Katie Cade May. And so really putting that in place to support families, to support children, support teens in anticipation of those big, intense moments.
Those sound so good.
I'm so excited for them.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I think I want to get on board with those too. These are virtual, right?
Yes.
Are they virtual?
Yes, they are all virtual. They start as a live presentation, but we do record them and have them available on demand. So they will be available all year. So whenever you happen to be listening to this, they are available.
Is there something specific if parents or professionals want to contact you where they should do that?
Sure. Yeah, they can reach out to us at neuropebble.com or hello@neuropebble.com is our email. You can find us on social media on all platforms. I'm Neurodivergent Therapist, and then Neuropebble is also on Instagram. And so we're available. If you have questions, we will do our best to direct you to the resources that may be the best fit or be able to create that for you.
Great. Thank you. Well, I love your understanding of teens and all the deep, big feelings that they're experiencing. Thank you so much for sharing some of your insights and strategies with us today. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. You always have the best questions and insights. So I always enjoy this, and supporting teens of having a fulfilling and comfortable life is my passion. So I'm happy to share it.
Well, thank you so much. Back to school jitters are real, especially for children or teens who have traditionally struggled in school. Parents, if there are things that resonated with you today, we would love for you to post that in the comments. At Stowell Learning Centers, we help children and adults eliminate struggles associated with dyslexia, learning, and attention challenges. We do this by identifying and developing not just what we can see on the surface, but the underlying processing or learning skills that aren't supporting the student well enough. The challenges associated with dyslexia and other learning disabilities can actually be dramatically improved when we strengthen the weak or missing underlying skills. And one of the great outcomes of building those foundational skills is reduced anxiety and increased confidence around school. We're on a mission to help as many people as possible, so please like, subscribe, share, so that we can reach families who really need encouragement, hope, and real solutions. Let's change the narrative for struggling students together.